Sam Hey guys. Here we go. We got some story time with Trailbot. Alright, we're coming from the Caton Campground in Colorado in the San Juan National Forest. Today's story, we're going to do Journey to the Center of the Earth, Chapter 8 is where we're at on this one. Oh boy, I'm excited to get back to this one. Let's just talk about where we're at here. We're in Caton Campground there. There's big old Ronnie right there. And we just gonna jump in Trailbot here and cruise on out onto the highway and hang a left and head over to Rico. Rico, Colorado, R-I-C-O. It's one of my favorite little mountain towns. There's just nothing there, a burger joint and a bar, you know. I used to stop with the motorcycle all the time and catch a bit of a break, get something to eat. But okay, let's talk about what we're doing. Let's get on out of here. Now, and then we left this story. We had just found out that he got the okay from the mayor to go ahead and investigate Sneffels, and he's gonna get him a guide to go with him, the eider-down hunter, and that's the off with this chapter 8. That's what we're gonna call this chapter 8, the eider-down hunter. Off at last. Okay, so here we go. That evening, I took a brief walk on the shore near Reykjavik, after which I returned to an early sleep on my bed of coarse planks, where I slept the sleep of the just. When I awoke, I heard my uncle speaking loudly in the next room. I rose hastily and joined him. He was talking in Danish with a man of tall stature and of perfectly Herculean build. The man appeared to be possessed of very great strength. His eyes, which started rather prominently from a very large head, the face belonging to which was simple and naive, appeared very quick and intelligent. Very long hair, which even in England would have been accounted exceedingly red, fell over his athletic shoulders. This native of Iceland was active and supple in appearance, though he scarcely moved his arms, being in fact one of those men who despise the habit of gesticulation common to southern people. All right, let's just take a look at this entrance there. You see this bridge now. Now, we come across this thing with 45,000 pounds, and there's no weight limit marking or anything on it. You just have to go, well, I guess the camper's in there. And, and you see big fifth wheels and stuff in there. But, you really got to question when you see that bridge, because it really kind of looks like it could use some repairs and some upgrades. All right, so we're going to hang a left here, get on the big road. And off we go. What is that? Colorado 145. That's what that is. And, yeah, all right. The other direction, we'd go to Telluride. This way we go to Rico, and eventually it gets down to Dolores and that kind of thing. All right. Gesticulation common to southern people. Everything in this man's matter revealed a calm and phlegmatic temperament. There was nothing indolent about him, but his appearance spoke of tranquility. He was one of those who never seemed to expect anything from anybody, who liked to work when he thought proper, and whose philosophy nothing could astonish or trouble. I began to comprehend his character simply from the way in which he listened to the wild and impassioned verbiage of my worthy uncle, while the excellent professor spoke sentence after sentence. He stood with folded arms, utterly still, motionless to all my uncle's gesticulations, When he wanted to say no, he would move his head left to right. When he acquiesced, he nodded, so slightly that you could scarcely see the undulation of his head. This economy of motion was carried to the length of avarice, whatever. Judging from his appearance, it should have been a long time before I had suspected him to be what he was, a mighty hunter. Certainly his manner was not likely to frighten the game. How then did he contrive to get at his prey? My surprise was slightly modified when I knew that this tranquil and solemn personage was only a hunter of the eider duck, the down of which is, after all, the greatest source of the Icelander's wealth. In the early days of summer, the female of the eider, a pretty sort of duck, builds its nest amid the rocks of the fjords, the name given to the all-narrow gulfs in Scandinavian countries, with which every part of the island is indented. No sooner has the eider duck made her nest than she lines the inside of it with the softest down from her breast. Then comes the hunter or trader, taking away the nest. The poor bereaved female begins her task over again, and this continues as long as any eider down is to be found. When she can find no more, the male bird sets to work to see what he can do. As, however, his down is not so soft, and has therefore no commercial value, the hunter does not take the trouble to rob him of his nest lining. The nest is accordingly finished, the eggs are laid, the little ones are born, and next year the harvest of eiderdown is again collected. Now, as the eider duck never selects steep rocks or aspects to build its nest, but rather sloping and low cliffs near the sea, the Icelandic hunter can carry on his trade operations without much difficulty. He is like a farmer who has neither to plow, to sow, nor to harrow, only to collect his harvest. This grave, sentient, silent person, as pragmatic as an Englishman on the French stage, was named Hans Bejelk, but that ain't gonna be right, but maybe it is. He had called upon us in consequence of the recommendation of M. Fredrickson. He was, in fact, our future guide. It struck me that had I sought the world over, I could not have found a greater contradiction to my impulsive uncle. They, however, readily understood one another. Neither of them had any thought about money. One was ready to take all that was offered him. The other was ready to offer anything that was asked. It may readily be conceived, then, that an understanding would soon come to between them. Now, the understanding was that he was to take us to the village of Stapi, situated on the southern slope of the peninsula of Sneffels, at the very foot of the volcano. Hans the guide told us that the distance was about 22 miles, a journey which my uncle supposed would take 2 days. But when my uncle came to understand that they were Danish miles of 8,000 yards each, he was obliged to be more moderate in his ideas, and considering the horrible roads we had to follow, to allow 8 to 10 days for the journey. 4 horses were prepared for us, 2 to carry the baggage and 2 to bear the important weight of myself and my uncle. Hans declared that nothing ever would make him climb on the back of any animal. He knew every inch of that part of the coast and promised to take us the very shortest way. His engagement with my uncle was by no means to cease. with our arrival at Stapi. He was further to remain in his service during the whole time required for the completion of his scientific investigations, at the fixed salary of 3 rix dollars a week, being exactly 14 shillings and 2 pence, minus 1 farthing English currency. One stipulation, however, was made by the guide. The money was to be paid to him every Saturday night, failing which his engagement was at an end. The day of our departure was fixed. My uncle wished to hand the eiderdown hunter in advance, but he refused in one emphatic word, after, which, being translated from Iceland into plain English, means after. The treaty concluded, our worthy guide retired without another word. A splendid fellow, said my uncle. Only he little suspects the marvelous part he is about to play in the history of the world. You mean, then, I cried in amazement, that he should accompany us? To the interior of the earth? Yes, replied my uncle. Why not? Okay, let's take a look at Rico. See? What a nice little town. And we came up here because there's supposed to be a city park. And I thought, oh, well, let's just check it out. Sometimes these city park things can prove to be a real score for people traveling through. So I thought we'd kind of check it out with the Jeep and see what we saw. It turned out to be not a score. It's just I think it's there, but it looked a little bit more private than what I was expecting. So I didn't want to, start intruding and snooping around kind of too much. So we basically just roll up and right here and go, okay, it's over there somewhere. It's either straight ahead or it's to the right here. I can't remember what. There's a little tiny little sign somewhere, but so you can see that road is like starting to get kind of really private. So it's just not worth snooping around. Anything you want to see, you can see from the bar or the restaurant over there just by talking to people. No, see, now there's a few places for sale, and boy, oh boy, I think this would just be a beautiful little town to retire in and write stories and just sit there and do nothing. But that would never happen because jackasses with the Jeep would come by and want to see where the city park is. All right, let's see if we can get a couple of more paragraphs of this before we end up. Okay. The marvelous part in the history of the world. You mean he's coming with us? Oh yeah, to the center of the earth. There were yet 48 hours to elapse before we made our final start. To my great regret, our whole time was taken up making preparations for our journey. All our industry and ability were devoted to packing every object in the most advantageous manner. The instruments on one side, the arms on the other, the tools here, and the provisions there. There were, in fact, 4 distinct groups. The instruments were, of course, of the best manufacture. A centigrade thermometer of Isel, counting up to 150 degrees, which to me did not appear half enough or too much. Too hot by half, if the degree of heat was to ascend so high, in which case we should certainly be cooked. Not enough if we wanted to ascertain the exact temperature of springs or metal in a state of fusion. A manometer worked by compressed air, an instrument used to ascertain the upper atmospheric pressure on the level of the ocean. Okay, guys, let's just put a pin in it right there, and we'll call it quits for now. Thanks so much for coming along, and we'll see you on the next one. Sam, see.